It's well known that Watts was the great portrait painter of his generation. And in the way of life's little ironies, of course, he didn't really like portrait painting. He was obliged to do it because it was his only reliable source of income to enable him to carry out his other work, which was spreading the word of art amongst the public. He turned his portrait painting to good use in that for over 50 years at his own expense, he invited interesting people of his age to sit to him and formed the basis of a collection which he subsequently presented to the National Portrait Gallery. Indeed, one could almost say he was instrumental in helping to found the gallery, because it was the Watts gift, his so-called Hall of Fame, that got it off the ground. And I believe there are something like 43 Watts portraits in it. But although he could make a pretty good stab at anybody in the way of a portrait, he was always perhaps happiest when painting his friends. And here you have a splendid example. The 19th century violinist Joachim, who was Hungarian by birth and had been taught by Mendelssohn and in turn taught Brahms, which is no mean timeline, I think. And always when Joachim was in England, he would visit Watts, and they would have a party. Watts would have a soiree in his studio. And here, in this portrait, is the great violinist playing in Watts's studio with Sir Charles Halley at the piano in the background. You can just see the lid of the piano. And an interesting facet of it is that it is the only portrait, as far as we know, that Watts ever painted in artificial light. Its subtitle is Dr. Joachim, a lamplight portrait. All Watts's pictures were painted in daylight to be viewed in daylight, but generally every rule has an exception, and this is it. And you see in it Watts's tremendous capacity to crystallize an instant. It is the great musician of his day, completely wrapped in his music. If you look at the expression on his face, indeed everything about it. Watts himself played the violin, so he was well acquainted with the positioning of hands and other technical aspects, although purists might carp and say, the violin is a little foreshortened, is it not? And the answer to that is, well, it's a portrait of a violinist, not a violin. But look at Joachim's face, how he is completely absorbed in his music. And Watts, although the picture was painted rapidly, it took some hours, has managed to crystallize that moment.